Greetings! In this video I'm going to be painting a veteran from the White Templars Chapter. This chapter is known for being stoic in their perseverance, unwavering in their determination to finish campaigns they start. Like many chapters I do, I've made the chapter pauldron custom. Some information about that is in the video description. To prime the model, I used black primer through my airbrush, followed by an undercoat of grey cere. This way, if you're following along, you can use Citadel's grey cere spray can primer instead, if preferred of course. Now, grey cere is a good starting point, but the White Templars have white armour, so I've used Ulthorn grey as a base coat for the armour. Despite being a grey, this colour works as a white in most cases, whilst allowing you to do highlights up to the brightest white paints available if desired. I made sure to cover most of the armour, including the chapter armorial, but not bothering about spots that were going to be black. Now onto some Abaddon black, painting in the cloth, the inner pauldron faces, the Crux Imperialis on the torso, the auto-bolt rifle casing, and the undersuit details. The black and white look a bit messy right now, but we can clean that up later. Now we're onto the little details around the model, starting with the leather. I used Rhinox hide to base coat these bits, including the bits that would be a different colour later, just to prevent little white bits sticking through where they're not meant to. I tried a different recipe for the leather this time, using Mournfang brown as the first highlight. This gives a much warmer finish, giving it a newer leather look instead of the dry leather that I usually do. As a final highlight, I used Deathclaw brown, doing a bunch of little dots and scratches to show some damage. I don't think this colour works very well with the Mournfang brown though. Now for the two bits of parchment present on the model. I use Zandri dust as a base coat here, going over the Rhinox hide. This paint often needs two coats for complete coverage, especially when thinned a little like I do with my homemade wet palette. To highlight the parchment, I used Ushabti bone, painting along the edges and large flat areas, leaving some bits as the previous colour to imitate shadow. A final highlight was done with Screaming Skull, mostly applied along the edges but bleeding into the most exposed bits too, making sure to keep the application spotty to make the paper look rough. Next, I did the wax for the Purity Seal. This was a fairly simple base coat with Screamer Pink, followed by a highlight with Pink Horror on the edges and raised bits on the skull stamp. Now switching over to Mechanicus Standard Grey to base coat the Terminator honours as well as highlighting some of the black parts. The weapon casing, Crux Imperialis on the torso, and the little crux on the knee receive some edge highlights with this colour. Next, I used Dawnstone to highlight the Terminator honours, as well as some of the details on the torso and weapon casing. For the stone bits, this was applied over most of the surface, leaving just the recesses, but for the weapon and the torso, it was only applied to the very edges. A final highlight for the Terminator honours was done with Administratum grey, doing small dots to imitate a stone finish and focusing around the upwards facing edges. Now for the red eye lenses and wrist lights. I base coated these bits with Mephiston red, not worrying about going over into the white as that was due to be cleaned up anyway. The first highlight for these bits was done with Evil Sunz Scarlet, painting most of the surface area but avoiding the recesses. The next highlight was Wild Rider Red, applied towards the middle of the face for the eyes and towards one of the sides for the wrist lights. Lugganath Orange finished these bits, applied in a smaller area still, in the same position as the previous highlight. Next I used some Dark Reaper to highlight the cloth, figuring that it'd be nicer to have a slight blue tone to help differentiate the black cloth material from the black ceramo-metallic alloy bits. Now to clean up all those mistakes I made. I switched back to Ulthorn Grey and cleaned up all the white bits. Next, I used some Abaddon Black to clean up the black bits. This included going around the chapter armorial carefully. Now to finish the white armour with a highlight of Corax White. This was applied along the upwards facing surfaces to emphasise their brightness, along the edges to help reduce the flatness, and some little scratch and scuff marks here and there to break up the plain surface. Next is ruining that clean armour with a bunch of chipping details. I used some trusty Rhinox hide for this, doing small dots along the edges of the armour panels to show where a little bit of paint has been scratched off, revealing something that's like an in-universe primer. For some spots I did scratches or cuts, making sure to keep some little dots around them to imitate fragments and the like. I also did a light dry brush application, as this creates a lot of little scratches that would take way too much time to do otherwise. Metallics now, starting with Retributor armour for the few gold details around the model. The colour plate shows that they use gold for the Aquila on the weapon, so I figured it's fine to use for the little details around the Mini. Gunmetal Grey was next, painting in all of the many silver bits around the model. The knife, the large rivets on the greave, the weapon chassis, power pack, helmet details, you get the idea. Next, I used some dura-aluminium to highlight, painting the edges and dotting rivets around the model. These two paints seem to go on smoother than the Citadel metallics, and they're fairly similar to Iron Warriors and Mournfang steels, so it works nicely for me. Now for some even heavier weathering with AK Interactive's Sepia enamel Paneliner. This was applied all over the model, though I was trying to apply it lighter. But that's the downside of using this brush applicator. It doesn't allow you to thin it yourself. Before it was fully dry, I went in with a cotton tip with a tiny bit of thinner and removed a fair bit of the enamel from the more exposed surfaces. I should really get some cotton tips that are made for this sort of thing, so they don't fall apart like you can see here. After it was fully dried, I applied my usual basing method, painted the base rim, and then sealed everything in with some ultramatte varnish. And here we have it, a veteran from the White Templars Chapter. I know I've said the same thing in a few videos now, but I was really apprehensive about this one while I was painting it. Only towards the end did I start to see the potential for this scheme. Throughout, it felt and looked rushed. In reality, I was approaching it from a time-saving perspective, trying to do each step in order to minimise cleanup. Doing the white and black first, then cleaning them up later worked well to reduce repetition, but it made it look really bad until it was fully cleaned up. I can understand why a lot of people paint like a single arm or leg at a time, getting little wins instead of, well, what feels like a slog before the gem at the end. Gloom aside, I am happy with this result. The damage effects help convey the persistence typical of the chapter, pushing through despite the odds. The little bits of gold work well too, adding a bit of colour to an otherwise muted scheme. Speaking of the scheme, due to the position of the cloth, I was unable to do the company marking. The White Templars use a high Gothic numeral on their left knee to indicate which company they're in. With that knee hidden, this guy could either be from the first company as one of the many veterans, or in any of the other companies as a company veteran in a captain's retinue. But anyway, that's all I've got for this one. My next video is going to be a little bit different than usual, but after that I'll be back to doing a requested chapter, so I hope you stick around for those videos.